Hello, book lovers, and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, I'm Beth, and this is Boo's Book Nook. April, what a month. It's gone. I read, I DNF'd. April has been the month of struggles, the month of slumps, all in the reading department. This month, I have DNF'd the most books I have ever done, I think, in my whole life. I DNF'd 4 books. It was 4 soft DNFs, so technically does it count? I quickly came to realise that it was me. It was me. And this month has been a struggle for reading, but actually, when I was looking over my stats, I realised I didn't do as bad as I thought I'd done. Overall, I actually had a good month. I managed to read 9 books this month. Without further ado, let's get on to the wrap up. One of my most anticipated releases came out this month, and you bet it was Fearless by Lauren Roberts. And so before reading that book, you know I had to do a reread of the entire series thus far. I binge read these 3 and it got me out of a slump. 5 stars. 5 stars all around. I love this world. This is the Powerless trilogy by Lauren Roberts. It follows the kingdom of Ilia one day have a plague which wipes out a lot of their population, and with it comes these special powers, and thus the elites are born. And these elites have all sorts of powers like mimicking, super strength, and then you have mundanes who have powers but aren't as good as the elites. And then you have the ordinaries, and you can bet who the king of Ilia blames on the plague and the disease. Yeah, he blames the ordinaries. There are some trials. They are called the purging trials, where basically the elites use this time to show off their powers and their abilities. And they go through a series of challenges, and we follow Payden and 2 of the king's sons, Prince Kit and Prince Kai, through this journey. We meet a lot of characters. We have love interests, we have unaliving, we have brutal fighting. Think Hunger Games style trials with a twist. I just love Lauren Roberts' style of writing and just the intrigue and excitement all around it. As I said, 5 stars all around. Heartbreaking. You will sob. I'm telling you, sob at Powerless and Powerful. Reckless has got a bit of a middle book syndrome about it, but on rereading it, I actually really liked that, and I think it's because I read them all at the same time, so I was immersed. So I did up the rating to 5 stars for that one, where I previously had it at 4. I've said before that I rate books 5 stars based on feeling, not just writing. Lauren Roberts does not write it perfectly. Yes, there are plot holes. Yes, there are ideas from other people, supposedly. The feelings it gave me, it made me feel. My heart was pounding with, the love interests. I cried. And when I have those physical reactions to reading, I know it is a good book for me. I reread those and went straight on to Fearless. This is the final book in the trilogy. Yeah, it broke me. I need therapy after this book. She tricks you. There is a Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 twist in this. If you know, you know. I can't really tell you much about it because I don't want to spoil the rest of the series if you haven't seen it. It summed it up well. It was a bit out there and things happened that I did not expect at all. But everything tied together, and as I said, I love this world. Recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it. I then went on to read this book, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. And this was fabulous. And I'm very late to the party with picking this up and reading it, but I borrowed it from my local library, and you bet I binged it. I loved it. It is a YA cozy fantasy read that is more realistic than fantasy. It's set in real world but with witches in it. I listened to the audiobook version of this as well alongside reading it, and that was fantastic. She put on all sorts of different voices, so I'd highly, highly recommend listening to the audiobook of this one too. This follows Mika Moon, who is a witch, and she is sent to help 3 children who are witches and coming into their powers, and she is sent to help train them and get better with controlling their powers. And the characters are just really likable. It wasn't really plot heavy and action based, but I think that's what I needed. I just needed a soft little palate cleanser to get me back into reading after my slump. And I would, of course, recommend this book as well. I then read What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama. This was brilliant. I gave this a 5 stars. It was so unexpected. I didn't really know what I was going to get when I picked up this book. It is originally written in Japanese and it has been translated by Alison Watts. This basically follows a series of different people in the city of Tokyo who are a bit stuck with something, whether that's work related, whether that's children related, friendships, jobs, anything. They all get directed to go to the library because what they're looking for is in the library. And they speak to a librarian there and she knows exactly which book to recommend them to read. This is just such an uplifting, positive read. And I don't tab books ever really, except when it has quotes in it which I want to remember. And this was so relatable and just resonant with real life. I think that's why I engaged so much more with it, because I related to the stories and I related to those doubts and self-esteem issues, etc. Here's a quote that I've underlined in this and tabbed. You told me that if you only ever look in front, your view will be quite narrow. So whenever I feel stuck or don't know what to do, I try to broaden my view, relax my shoulders and walk sideways like a crab. This has prompted me to pick up more translated fiction from Japanese authors from my library because I just loved this style of writing. I gave this 5 stars, as I said, and highly recommend giving this a go. Next, I had an unexpected read that has been on my TBR for years, and I mean years, and it's been gathering dust, and that was The Deathless Girls by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, and I gave this 4 stars. This was fantastic. Her writing style is just what I love. Very much like V.E. Schwab's poetic style of writing with all that figurative language that people sometimes say is too flowery. I love it. I love that because it shows me rather than just tells me. The only issue with this was that it felt like it was 2 stories squidged into one, where I definitely think she could have written 2 separate books. Like, they probably would have been 5 stars each. They are from the traveller community and they are treated horrifically. Even the other slaves who weren't travellers judged them and were unkind. The language they used against them, it was heartbreaking. And slavery and discrimination happens all the time still. And so I think that's why it was heartbreaking. I started crying in the 2nd chapter of this book. And we get towards the end and then there's a fantasy twist, which is why I think it would be a good 2 book. I'm not going to spoil it for you here. There is some fantastical creatures that turn up towards the end of the book. I loved it. Absolutely loved it, but I would have wanted more. I wanted more. Definitely recommend. I know she has some other books, but this was her YA fantasy debut, and what a debut it was. Just gorgeous. And this cover and edition is stunning. Next, I read this, The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. This is a horror novel. I love the film. And I also love the stage show of this. And this follows Arthur Kipps, who is a trainee solicitor, and he is sent to this town to deal with Mrs. Drablow's estate because she has unfortunately passed away. So he has to go to her house and sort through papers, and he went to her funeral, etc. When he turns up at this village, no one wants to talk of the house. This house is on the end of a causeway. So basically a path that is only visible a few times a day because of the tide. So once you are there and the tide comes over, you are stranded on this island in this house. It is spooky. It's a very haunted house. It was a 3 stars because that tension and that scare factor wasn't up to where I thought it was going to be. Now, that could have been because I know the story and I've seen it before. Susan uses quite long chapters, and I always find that with long chapters, they're not as suspenseful. And when you have short sentences, short chapters, pace is quick, then that's when I feel that tension building. But because they were long, it felt like the pace was a bit slow. The ending was fabulous. I really liked that ending. I think it could have been a bit longer and written a bit more in depth to really engage the reader in this. Of course, it's been made into a film and a stage show, so the premise is fantastic. I love that premise, but it definitely could have been executed better. But worth a read, I say, more so in spooky season. And finally, I read this, A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. So there are 2 books in this one. I have only read the first book, A Study in Scarlet, and this follows Sherlock Holmes and is narrated by Dr. John Watson, and we go through the Study in Scarlet, go through all the clues in the story to solve a murder. This is very outdated, I do have to say. I gave it a 3 stars because I do love the story of Sherlock Holmes, and that stems from the TV show and the films. I just love it. And I just think it's so clever the way Sherlock he could deduce where you've been just by some mud on your trainers or like a hair on your shirt. Very clever, very interesting. But because this was written in the 1800s, some of it isn't acceptable now, and it made me feel a little uncomfortable in just the language used, referring to some people in derogatory terms. But that being said, I do realise it was written into the 1800s, so of course it's going to be in that style. And that's why I gave it 3 stars, because I did enjoy it and I know it's a classic. If I put aside my feelings about some of the interesting use of language and things that happen in this, then it is good, it is enjoyable. But I did have to knock it down because of that. And that may cause controversy. People may be having a go at me because of that. But that's just my opinion, okay? And usually I can get past that, but this was a little too much. It was a little too much, but we need to learn from these things. So I'm glad it hasn't been redacted and changed in any way, because it's important to have the original work, how they were written, and then you can learn from that and read it. Of course, if someone wrote this book today, I don't think it would get published. This month, I had some really highly rated books, and I think it was because I was in a slump that I mood read. So I purposely chose books that I knew I'd like. Hence why I had 5 5-star reads this month. I did say I DNF'd some books, and I will say it's a soft DNF. I would like to read them at some point, but I was really struggling to get into them, and I had to mood read it, as I've just said. The first book of that was The Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicerelli. I just wasn't getting into it, and the writing style was very different from the first book. And I know people have said to keep going with it and keep trying it, but it was a library book, so I gave it back to the library because someone else had reserved it. So I thought that's only fair while I'm not in it. I do want to try and pick that up because I loved the first one. I loved The Crimson Moth, so I'm really sad that I just couldn't get into that one. The next one was The Lighthouse Sisters by Jill Thompson. This was okay. It is a historical fiction novel that's set in Jersey during the occupation of World War II. I think the reason that I soft DNF'd this one was because I've recently read a lot of Kristen Hanna, and her books are intense. And I love that. I know they are very over-exaggerated and it's not 100% accurate. I think going from Kristen Hanna to Jill Thompson's writing was a very different pace, and I just couldn't get into it. But I was intrigued by the story, so I would be intrigued to try and pick that up again. But once again, it was a library book, so I had to give it back. The third book I DNF'd was the second one in the Sherlock Holmes series I've got here. So that is The Sign of the Four. I think after reading A Study in Scarlet, I was just flagging, and I was struggling with the writing style, as I was saying previously about The Study in Scarlet. And so I thought, let me put a pin in it, and I will finish the second book at some point, but it was just too much for me at that time. The final book that I soft DNF'd was The Words for Smoke by Sarah Maria Griffin. Now this is beautifully written, stunning, and it sounds incredible. It's like a haunted house fantasy style book. Oh, incredible. And the Queen herself, V. Schwab, has recommended this, and they're friends. I did start this and I got 70 pages through and I was enjoying it, but because I was in that slump stage, I was really struggling, and I didn't want that to affect what I thought of this book. So I still have it. It is a library book, and I've just renewed it because I do want to pick this up again before I give it back to the library, because it is right up my street, this, and the writing is gorgeous. That is my April reading wrap up, and I think I did really well for saying I've been in a slump this month. May is an exciting month, and I've picked my TBR using my new TBR jar, and you can watch that video now. That is already up, and I picked out some great books. I am so excited to read them this month, and I go away on holiday, so the perfect time to read. Let me know in the comments what books you read this month and what was your favourite read of the month. I would love to know. I think overall my favourite read of this month was in fact What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. And I know a few of you thought I was going to say Lauren Roberts because that was really good, but I knew it was going to be good. So actually this Japanese fiction was so unexpected. It has my heart. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and click that notification button so you are notified every time I post a new video. I really appreciate the support I've had so far on this channel, and I'm absolutely loving it and can't wait to make more videos for you. So go check out my previous videos, and I will see you really soon for another one. Bye!